Hello and welcome to Don't Lecture Me. I'm Michael Rubenstein, Executive Director of the Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. We're in the baseball room at the museum where I'm joined by Rick Cleveland, Clarion Ledger sports writer and recently turned author who has penned a new biography on Boo Ferris, a noted Mississippi baseball legend, entitled Boo, A Life in Baseball Well Lived. Welcome, Rick.
Good to be here, Michael.
We've certainly produced more than our share of colorful, successful sports stories in Mississippi. Why Boo?
I'll be honest with you, Michael, I don't think there's a better sports story in the history of Mississippi than Boo, greatest pitcher in baseball for the first 2 years of his career, straight out of Shaw, Mississippi. Only one pitcher in the history of baseball has won more games in his first 2 years than Boo Ferris. He won 46 games over his first 2 seasons, then threw one pitch in 1947 that essentially ended his career.
So is the story not a biography? Is it overcoming the disappointment of being so close to greatness and then suffering the career-damaging injury?
No, it's a story of his life, but I think that is the most compelling part, the fact that he had that happen to him and then has had such a productive, interesting life and has touched so many Mississippians.
You didn't dwell on the injury. It got a chapter like many other parts of his life got a chapter, but he doesn't dwell on it either.
No, that's part of the story. I mean, he doesn't dwell on it. He says, I've heard him say it 1,000,000 times, that's water under the bridge. You know, he doesn't. He's got the best outlook on life of anybody I know.
What is the appeal of Boo's story?
I guess the biggest appeal to me is, again, how many people he's touched and how. I mean, we had a signing in Cleveland, a book signing in Cleveland the other night. We sold 670 books, and I guess there were probably 400 people that came through that line. And every one of them had a story they wanted to tell about how Coach had touched their lives.
Beloved is the word?
Oh, cherished, I think, is the word.
Mm-hmm. What have you learned about Boo in the process of this that you didn't know before?
That no matter how good I thought he was and how special I thought he was, there were so many stories I didn't know. You know, so many ways that he touched people that I had no idea about. I singled out 5 Delta State players to tell the story of how he shaped their lives while he was the coach there. But the truth of the matter is, I could have done one of those stories for every one of those players, including several that he cut, including John Grisham.
Yeah, we'll get to Grisham in just a second. He's credited with sending almost 100 coaches out into the world from Delta State, 100 coaches. Why do you think he was such a muse for so many future coaches?
Because so many of them wanted to be like him. I mean, they saw a person they wanted to emulate. They saw a person who was so satisfied and enjoyed what he did so much, and I think that had a lot to do with it. 5 of those 100 have been National Coach of the Year at one level or another, high school, junior college, or college.
So you think it's Boo, they're imitating Boo as Boo the person, it's not necessarily a transference of Boo's love of the game or Boo's teaching of the game to these people?
Oh, I think it's very much the transference, because I think all of them find out once they become coaches they can't do it exactly like him. In fact, Mike Kennison, the current coach at Delta State, who has the best winning percentage in NCAA history, said he tried the first couple years to do it like Boo had done it, and then he figured out, you know, there's only one man who can do it this way. Mm-hmm. I've got to be Mike Kennison. You know.
Coach is certainly well known as a coach, less well known. He coached as recently as 20 years ago. Right. He is less well known as a premier professional baseball player, which has been more than 60 years ago. Probably no position in baseball has changed in that 60 years more than the pitcher's position.
No doubt about it. As he says, when you went to the mound in those days, you were supposed to finish.
Sure. And
he usually did.
Of course, now it's setup man, long reliever, short reliever, relievers for the relievers.
Right.
And as you say, an Iron Man then, an Iron Man now is probably pitches 5, 6 fewer complete game equivalents in his innings.
Oh, absolutely. But even then, he was an Iron Man. Even then, he was one of the top 2 or 3 in the league in innings pitched, complete games, all those categories.
And yet never seems to have been affected by it, by the success, it would have gone to a lot of people's heads, I think.
Oh, he is the most humble man that I've known, especially considering what he was and what he achieved.
It would have been easy to be bitter, too, with the way his career diminished so quickly, one pitch to the next.
And he's the exact opposite of bitter. He is, I don't know, in many ways I think he's happy the way it turned out.
Why?
Because because of all the relationships he has with all his former players. It is a phenomenon. I mean, he stays in very close touch with everybody that ever played for him.
Is there anything particularly Mississippi flavored about your book? Is this story the same if Boo had grown up in Shaw, Montana, or Shaw, Michigan, as opposed to Shaw, Mississippi?
Well, I'm sure they would have their own. I mean, there would be the same. They would have their own way of putting it, but yeah, it's all Mississippi. It's his daddy driving him on gravel roads to Memphis to watch the Memphis Chicks. First professional games he ever saw were the Memphis Chicks in Memphis. It's Delta semi-pro ball back when every little town had its own team, and the parks were filled, by the way.
One of the things that struck a chord with me, I think in Mississippi sometimes we treat our celebrities, especially our athletes, like they're a natural resource. Oh sure, I can call Jerry or Archie and he'll speak to my son's banquet or whatever. And I think when you talked about when he pitched the exhibition game in Memphis in the book, and school was let out in Shaw, and school buses from Mississippi journeyed to Memphis to be able to watch the exhibition game because Boo was going to pitch, and they went ahead and pitched in the whole 9 innings.
9 innings of an exhibition game. It'd be unheard of today, just unheard of.
You know, there are 3 good writers on display in your book. You use extensive excerpts of Coach's letters home from Boston to his family at the height of his playing career. And the third guy in there is a fellow by the name of John Grisham, who wrote the foreword. Was that difficult to get Grisham involved?
It took one email. I emailed John, and he said, "Oh man, I'd love to do it. No questions asked." I mean, he just said, "I'd love to do it." And I mean, he, like anybody who has been around Boo, I think for any length of time, he was touched by him and eager to do it. In fact, he did it very quickly. But I think John Grisham and I both agree that the best writing in the book are those letters he wrote home to his mama.
They're so simple, so pure, so direct. They really are. You could try to write a letter that good and spend a long time and not make it that good.
I've got two folders of letters he's written me through the years, and you know, the most cherished one of all is the one he wrote to me after my daddy died. It was just, God, it was just, you know, made me feel so much better. You know.
Mm-hmm. Do you think he's the nicest guy in the world? Nicest guy ever lived?
He is the nicest guy I have ever met, and he is the only person I know who truly lives his life every day by the golden rule. I mean, he is treating everybody he comes into contact with the way he would want to be treated.
The book is Boo, A Life in Baseball Well Lived, written about Mississippi's most beloved baseball legend by the state's best-known sports writer. I'm Michael Rubenstein, and this has been Don't Lecture Me.